Welcome to PBCJ's coverage of the sitting of the Senate. I am Simone Absalom, and I'll provide a brief outline of what's expected to take place during the sitting. But before we begin, did you know that if a member showed disregard for the authority of the chair or abuses the rules of the Senate by persistently and willfully obstructing the business of the Senate, or otherwise, the President shall direct the attention of the Senate to the incident and move that the senator be suspended from the service of the Senate. And the President shall put the question, no seconder be required, no amendment, no adjournment, no debate being allowed. On the agenda for this sitting, statement by the Minister of Education, Youth and Information, Senator Lambert Brown, on freedom of the press. Under government business, debate is to commence on the bill shortly entitled the Plea Negotiations and Agreements Act 2017. In the questions and answers to questions segment, the Minister of Education, Youth and Information is to answer question 3 posed by Senator Lambert Brown regarding overseas trips undertaken by Prime Minister Andrew Holness since March of 2016. And that's what's on the agenda. It should be noted that elements of the day's agenda can be moved or changed. But before we go, here are a few things you should bear in mind if you plan to attend a session at Gordon House. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card from the office of the clerk. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed, unless so authorized by the presiding officer. And there should be no smoking inside the parliamentary building. You are watching PBC Jamaica. Now over to the proceedings.
On the matter of press freedom in Jamaica and related issues. Mr. President, in light of Jamaica being ranked 8th position by the Reporters Without Borders organization, and amid concerns about malicious communications in cyberspace, on Wednesday, May 3rd, World Press Freedom Day was observed internationally, and Reporters Without Borders, an international non-profit, non-governmental organization that promotes and defends freedom of information and freedom of the press, gave its assessment that Jamaica ranks among the countries that most respect freedom of information. Jamaicans can be just as proud that our long-standing practice of allowing our free press to operate in a manner that promotes free discourse in support of our traditions has been recognized outside our borders and been praised. The Access to Information Act has allowed more of our citizens and media to gain access to government information as we broaden the scope of transparency and accountability. Mr. President, I would suggest it should be of great import to our citizens as a whole that we should value this tradition and to be on alert to resist any attempt to undercut this freedom. Mr. President, the fact is we are now in a new era, and many of the rights and the responsibilities previously taken for granted are being challenged by technological developments, new paradigms, and new mores. Among the critical issues facing us are technological change. Changes in technology are advancing more rapidly than the necessary regulatory and legislative reform. There is a risk that further technological developments will render current regulatory systems and legal frameworks increasingly ineffective. How should regulators deal with the informal sector? 2, the new media landscape and the fake news. The media revolution is transforming fundamentally the nature of journalism and its ethics. The means to publish is now in the hands of citizens. While the internet encourages new forms of journalism that are interactive and immediate, there are also greater risks of falsehood being peddled as authentic information. Current media ecology is chaotic. Professional journalists share the journalistic sphere with tweeters, bloggers, citizen journalists, and social media users. We're also moving towards a mixed news media of citizen and professional journalism across many media platforms. This new mixed news media requires new mixed media ethics, guidelines that apply to amateur and professional, whether they blog, tweet, broadcast, or write for newspapers. The challenge remains how much of this can be legislatively regulated, or whether it should be at all. So even as we celebrate press freedom, the threat to our society and the threat that societies face may not be the physical intimidation which so many fear. Rather, the biggest concern should be the undermining of institutions and the best practices in our way of life by persons with evil intentions. Many of the recruits are alienated with a history of personal or psychological problems, petty crime, and gang membership. Some of these organizations offer a powerful message of glamour, violence, and a sense of belonging. Social media is now a key battleground for terrorist organizations. In this new era of disinformation and terrorist recruitment, there's a clear need to find a new balance between privacy rights and legitimate security concerns. There are other concerns to be looked at as well regarding the competition for ratings and the protection of minors. What are the implications, Mr. President, of technological change for privacy and the management of personal information? One of the most important roles of government is to create the conditions for economic prosperity and development. This means that government has to address all of these issues and develop a modern regulatory framework that is designed for this new era. It also requires a deep understanding of the critical importance that communication channels now play in an economy and of the economic impact of popular empowerment through widespread engagement with data, creative images, voice-based services, and text. This means that the government itself must move beyond its traditional focus on increasingly narrow and static infrastructure issues and address the consumption and influence of content. Mr. President, we must celebrate our achievements, but must use the media in a positive way to re-socialize our society, to be disciplined, respectful to Jamaica. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator Golden.
Mr. President, I thank the Minister for his statement. It's a somewhat unusual statement in the sense that it doesn't really provide a lot of information. It raises some issues of importance, asks some questions that are salient. We are indeed in an era where the advent of the internet and the use of it by way of social media in its various forms is changing and has changed fundamentally the way in which information is provided and absorbed by the population. I don't detect in this ministerial statement any clear policy thinking around this, rather than a recognition that there are issues that have emerged that are worthy of further thought. There are a couple of things that the minister said that do raise some concern. I mean, the statement, or the sentence in the statement that says, in this new era of disinformation and terrorist recruitment, there is a clear need to find a new balance between privacy rights and legitimate security concerns. I'm interested to see what the minister has in mind in terms of finding this new balance between privacy rights and legitimate security concerns. We have the Cybercrimes Act, which was reviewed recently by a Joint Select Committee of Parliament and amended by Parliament to strengthen it or adjust it in critical areas. And it wasn't an old piece of legislation anyway. So Parliament has been responsive to the use of the computer and the internet to carry out wrongdoing. We eliminated criminal libel, this Parliament, I think in 2014 with the Defamation Act, eliminated the old offense of criminal libel, which was rejoiced at by the international free press associations, because that particular offense has been used in various countries as a means to suppress press freedom and entrench autocracy. So Parliament has been active in this area, but I detect in the statement a sense of unease, but no clear policy initiative being articulated in relation to it. I note the sentence that says, this means that government itself must address the consumption and influence of content. Censorship. I'm wondering what that means. Censorship. And Minister, I'd ask if you would please develop that thought further, because on the face of it, the idea that the government must address the consumption and influence of content is concerning. I don't think it's the role of government to be censoring the content of information that's available to the population. The law must protect, and does protect, the legitimate interests of citizens in the protection of their reputations and the use of the tool of the internet and computers as a means of inflicting wrong and harm, whether it be to the devices themselves, or the misappropriation of data, or to threaten or intimidate persons or bully them. And that is a balance that has been struck. I'm intrigued and somewhat perturbed by this notion that the government must address the consumption and influence of content in the media space. And I would ask if the Minister would be so kind as to elucidate further what he means by that statement.
Thank you, Senator Golden. Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I don't think, Senator, you're to read into that concern any, as I'm hearing, sort of voter comments about censorship. That's not the idea. That's not what we're talking about. Are you allowing me to respond or not? Are you allowing me to respond? You want me to sit and you respond?
Minister. Senators, I'm going to ask that you, if you allow, hello, please. Minister, could I ask you just to moderate your response? Go ahead, please, Minister. Minister, go ahead, please.
You want to censor the minister?
Mr. President, let me make it very clear now. I'm not going to be intimidated by anyone. Absolutely not. So, if you're asking a question and you want me to answer it, allow me to answer. So, I'm saying, Senator Golding, that is not the intent at all. The I can speak from several perspectives. I don't want to get into particular security concern, but the issue is, and the Broadcasting Commission and ourselves are having discussion, and I will be bringing forward certain proposals of managing the media landscape, because the truth is that even the existence of the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, where only 20%, when you look at the media landscape, it is only now regulating 20% of the media landscape. 80% is now in the social media dimension. And what are the guidelines, what are the ethics that should guide that particular sector? So it's really just understanding how technology has evolved, and that content is a big issue. And if it is that we are going to allow persons to operate in whether formal or informal, where in fact, I must say the media is really moving into social media, that there's no clear regulatory guideline for the person who are operating in that. So all of this, ladies and gentlemen, impact on our society, impact equal on our security, impact on the socialization of our people. The social media is itself being used not only for recruitment of terrorists, but to glamorize criminal activities. So even how do you protect, as a number of countries have that concern, your young people, your children, who now have access to all social media content? I mean, what should there be any management and regulation as to how the social media operate? I mean, these are things that are putting out there, because as a society, this government is not by itself going to articulate a policy without a consensus among not only opposition, but stakeholders as to how we are going to operate within this new environment.
Mr. President.
Senator Goldie.
Thank you to the Minister for his response. Again, I'm not very clear on what the purpose of the statement is, other than to indicate some concerns about a particular issue, which is an important issue. The point that was made about the percentage of media content or information that is now accessed not through traditional media but through the social media, I think you said 80%, Minister, is a particular concern. I've heard, for example, that well over half of the people in the United States, for example, access their news through Facebook. And Facebook operates via algorithms which tend to channel information that the person's responses on Facebook would indicate that is more in tune with their outlook on life and their thinking and their preferences. And the effect of this is that persons' views on what's happening in the world, the information that is channeled to them, tends to be narrowly constrained to meet their own particular predilections or preferences or indeed prejudices. So you have a natural polarizing effect that approach to the dissemination of information creates, where persons get self-reinforcing information that they then further identify with a particular point of view and don't have the benefit of hearing contrary points of view, or if they hear them put in a way that either denigrates or undermines or otherwise trivializes that other information. And you see this in the polarization of discourse across different segments of the population. So these are very real issues of concern. These are not issues that mankind has had to face in the past. I don't, other than Facebook's commitment to try and adjust some of their own internal arrangements, and that's entirely up to them under the present legal regime. I have not heard anything articulated as to how to address that particular problem, but it just indicates that this is a phenomenon that is going to become increasingly influential in the way in which people perceive the reality around them, the values and attitudes that they display, the prejudices or particular values that they uphold or eschew. And so it is something that is of concern, I think, to persons who believe in the idea of balance and truth being the yardsticks by which information should be assessed. So, in light of what you've said, Minister, we look forward to hearing what policy the government intends to put forward in tackling this issue of consumption and influence of content and the striking of a balance between privacy rights and legitimate security concerns in the context of course, the freedoms enshrined in our Charter of Rights. Thank you, sir.
Senator Morris, you have a question on this issue?
Mr. President.
Go ahead, please.
But before I ask the Honourable Minister the question, I would like to indicate, Mr. President, that in the cut and thrust of parliamentary debate, you're going to have sotto voces, and you're going to have interactions flowing across the aisle. But in terms of how we respond to each other, we must always remember to treat each other with respect. And I must say that as someone who I had a great deal of respect prior to coming into this Senate, I must say, Honourable Minister, that shouting experience just now has really caused me to wonder if it is the same person that I knew prior to coming in the Senate. But more on. Mr. President, the ranking of Jamaica as at number 8 continues on a positive trajectory that we have had over the years in terms of Jamaica's press freedom. And there are a number of things that the institution takes into consideration in doing its assessment and ranking. And one of the considerations is the ease at which individuals within the press have access to information and to various government officials. Now, it has been an established practice, certainly within the last 20 or so years, for us to have regular post-cabinet press briefings so that journalists can have interaction with the ministers and to get information on what is taking place in terms of cabinet decisions. And I have noticed that there has been a decline in terms of the number of press conferences that has been taking place in terms of post-cabinet press conferences. And I would want to find out from the minister what is the situation with that. Is it a deliberate decision to cut down on the regularity of post-cabinet press conferences? Secondly, Minister, and I know that this is related, I take note that in recent times there has been an announcement for what we call OPM TV. And I notice individuals in the public and in the press have been asking what is the particular role of this particular initiative in light of the fact that you have JIS TV, PBCJ, CPTC, right, as public television entities. What is the role of this new entity? What is the cost that it is going to for the members on the public purse? I would want to find out some more about that.
Minister, do you have that information? No.
No, Mr. President, I think you should allow. I think you should allow. Okay.
It's okay. Senator Morris, what are you saying?
No, I'm saying that you should allow the minister to answer the question.
But I asked a simple question, you know. Do you have the information? Does not allow him to answer the question. Come again? Minister Reid, do you have the information?
That's leading.
Minister Reid, do you have the information? Well, respond, please.
Mr. President, first of all, let me deal with the issue of we have had consistently so post-cabinet press briefing. We have a policy that allows the respective ministers to deal with policy issues, and where is necessary, we will have a post-cabinet to deal with issues that we need to deal with. But I want to say during the period of the sectoral, which we allow the ministers to articulate their clear policy and information. So there's no issue in regards to post-cabinet press briefing. The issue of OPM TV, which is very much consistent with the point I am making in terms of the changing media landscape and operating on different platforms. There will be at another stage about overall government communication strategy, merging and consolidation of agencies, including PBCJ, looking at the strategic position of GIS, etc. In regards to the further detail in terms of cost, etc., I don't have that information before me, so you can table those as questions, and I'll be quite happy to respond to those details.
Senator Morris.
You just said that there is a consistency in terms of the policy, in terms of the OPM TV, but at the same time you spoke about mergers, etc. And at the same time whilst you are contemplating merging, you are creating a new entity. And I think, Minister, there is definitely some inconsistency there.
Senator Morris, you had a question?
No, I'm just asking if he believes that, if he doesn't believe that that is an inconsistency.
Well, no, I don't believe so, because, you know, when you look at, for example, the amount of media entities that exist, they far outnumber government, and our people are looking for more and more information. So I don't see that as inconsistent. I don't see that inconsistent. Yeah, but I'm saying I will speak later on a full strategy in terms of how we are going to communicate. That doesn't change the need for us to really look at PBCJ and JIS separately from OPM. We need to be very clear, because the information portfolio, for example, is no longer at OPM. But the Office of the Prime Minister, as any ministry, can have and have been mandated to make sure that they equally are communicating. It's almost like saying that only OPM should have a website. We encourage all our ministries to have multimedia platforms so they can communicate to our publics, and we can also receive from them issues that they want us to address. So we are into the business of communicating with our public, the persons who elect us, and we are going to make sure that we do all that we can in terms of transparency and accountability, and give our people more information, not less information, very efficiently so.
Thank you very much. Senator Morris.
A follow-up question. Minister, I would want to find out to see if a license have been granted for OPM TV, and when was the license granted?
You know,
makes the dream work.
The matter, it's you know, it was good that I raised the matter, because one of the issues that is emerging, Mr. President, I said before, is that media has now moved from traditional media to social media. The actual OPM channel is a YouTube channel. There's no cost, and I'm saying the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica does not monitor or regulate those media form, which in fact, this I said, Senator, I'll have to come back, because one of the issues is even the viability and sustainability of BCJ, because those entities that are being regulated by BCJ are complaining already that in the free media space, right, there's no regulation, there are no fees, and they have to be paying fees. So I'm raising it because we all have to come together to look at the changing media landscape and how we're going to manage.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brown.
Thank you. I have a few questions, sir. But based on last time, when you asked them to gather, we run the risk of some not being answered. So with your permission, I wish to ask my questions one by one. So, Senator, Minister, in your statement in the third paragraph, you spoke to Access to Information Act has allowed more of our citizens and media to gain access to government information as we broaden the scope of transparency and accountability. Could you tell us how many access to information requests have been received by the government in the last 12 months, and how many of those requests have had response within the timeline stipulated by the legislation? And how many of the requests have been granted? That's the first.
Mr. President, with due respect, I tabled a statement, and those kind of detailed information would properly be required to be tabled in the appropriate manner. I do not have that kind of information to give the Senate.
No, Mr. President, I accept the minister to be saying that notwithstanding the declaration in the statement about access to information, he does not have the information that I have requested. So could I now move to, because I must tell you, Mr. President, I'm worried about the statement. It's ominous, the direction of the statement, and in respect to the freedom of the citizens. There are a number of points in which I raise the issue. In my mind is raised challenge to press freedom, challenge of censorship being arising. But let me ask the minister whether or not he's aware that Jamaica in 2015 made significant movement on the World Press Freedom Index. And if he's aware, could he tell us what position Jamaica occupied in 2015 in respect to the World Press Freedom Index?
We were at number 10 in 2015. We are now at number 8.
That is in respect to the World Press Freedom Index. Is that what you're saying, Minister? Because that's what's my question.
Senator Brown, you know, you need to just ask your question so that you can
Mr. President,
get
I've
an
asked
answer.
a question, the minister's answered. I intend to ask another question.
Well, just ask the question so him can
but
answer them, no man.
Mr. President, I want to be sure, given what I know the answer to be, right, that the minister was answering the question that I asked. Just want to be sure, that's all I asked him.
Minister, answer the question, please. You answered it already?
I am repeating that we were at 10 from the information I have in 2015. Yes, and we are now at 8 this year. I said it already.
Mr. President, that leads me to the next question. Would you agree with me, Minister, that there's a difference between the World Press Freedom Index and the index developed by the Reporters Without Borders? Would you agree with me that there's a difference between the two? You're the information minister.
Yes, there's two different organizations. There's a difference.
Would you agree with me that in respect to Reporters Without Borders, Jamaica was at 9th in 2015, and now we have just moved a single position up to 8th? Would you agree with me on that?
Say yes if you
I'll have to verify that information.
You heard me, Senator Morris?
You have to verify it. In other words, you don't know the answer to that question.
I'll have to verify that
I
information.
hear you, and I'm just clarifying that you're saying to us you do not know the answer to that question.
I'll have to verify that
All right, thank
information.
you. Mr. President, could the minister indicate to us? Yes, he's right, he doesn't know. And I'd help in verifying it. In verifying it, may I direct you to the JIS statement of February 13, 2015, which quoted former Minister Sandra Faulkner as indicating that in respect to Reporters Without Borders, we rank 9th, and in respect to the other one, we rank 17th. Mr. President, Minister spoke to social media. You don't understand, so I'm talking to that minister, the real minister, not the junior minister. Mr. President, the proliferation of social media allows people in different government departments to interact on social and political issues. I've seen in social media a statement purporting to be from the government of Jamaica warning users of government instruments not to engage in political discussion. Could the minister confirm whether or not such a statement, such a policy directive have been issued by the office of the Prime Minister or any other government entity?
Mr. President, I will have to investigate and report on that.
Mr. President, the sotto voce remarks by Senator Knight find so much favor with me. I have no further question. No further question from this minister, who today has demonstrated his lack of knowledge of important issues in the portfolio and which he has chosen to make a statement to the Senate. It's almost a waste of time.
Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate are the following. Annual Report of the Water Resources Authority for the year 2015-2016. Annual Performance Report of the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries for the year 2016-2017.
Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives. To the Honourable Senate, I have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on the 3rd day of May 2017, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Public Debt Management Act was passed in the House of Representatives with 5 amendments, signed Colonel P. Charles, CDJP, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives. Minister, on behalf.
Mr. President, I would like, on behalf of the leader of government business, indicate that in regards to the bill entitled An Act to Amend the Public Debt Management Act was passed in the House of Representatives, 5 amendments, and I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill.
A bill shortly entitled the Public Debt Management Amendment Act 2017 read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill.
Petitions. Papers. Reports from committees. Notices of motions given orally. Questions and answers to questions.
Thought Senator Skip had a question, but and I was awaiting him asking it. But let me remind you, President, that last week we were told that the answer to question number 3 on the other paper in respect to the trips of the Prime Minister would be available today. If it is available, I ask that the answers be provided to us.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. In regards to the question tabled by Senator Lambert Brown from that side, notice of which was given on March 24th, 2017. Question 1, would the minister indicate the number of overseas trips undertaken by the Most Honourable Prime Minister since assuming office in March 2016 to the end of December 2016? Answer, the Most Honourable Prime Minister has visited 10 countries during the period. Question number 2, would the minister also indicate the following: the purpose of each trip, the duration of each trip, the size and composition of the delegation that accompanied the Most Honourable Prime Minister, and the cost of each such trip? Answers. The country visited Washington, D.C., United States, attended and participated in the United States Caribbean Central Energy Summit for 3 days, the 3rd to the 5th of May 2016. Composition of the trip: Most Honourable Prime Minister, 1 advisor, and 1 security officer. The cost, $8,559.46 United States dollars. Next trip, Havana, Cuba. Purpose: attended and participated in the 7th Summit of the Association of Caribbean States in Havana for 4 days duration, June 3rd to 6th, 2016. Size and composition: Most Honourable Prime Minister, Permanent Secretary, 1 assistant, and 1 security officer. Cost, $3,305.21 US dollars. Trip to Panama: attended and participated in the opening ceremony of the expanded Panama Canal. Duration 3 days, period 25th to the 27th of June 2016. Composition: Most Honourable Prime Minister, 1 assistant, and 1 security officer. Cost, US $7,545.91 US dollars. Trip to Guyana: attended and participated in the 37th regular meeting of CARICOM, Georgetown. Duration, the 3rd to the 8th of July, 2016, for a period of 6 days. Trip included Most Honourable Prime Minister, 1 assistant, 1 communication officer, 1 security officer. Cost, US $10,610.79. Trip to Brazil: attended and participated in the games of the 31st Olympiad in Rio de Janeiro, 5 days, August 11th to 15th, 2016. The composition included the Most Honourable Prime Minister, 1 assistant, 1 security officer. The total cost, US $19,149.80. Trip to Morocco, Mr. President. And also on his way back, he stopped in Nassau. During the period, sorry, 1 second. Morocco and Nassau, Bahamas. The purpose of that trip was attended and participated in the 22nd session of the conference parties of COP to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change 2016 and grand reopening of the Sanders Royal Bahamian and Spa Resort. The period of 13th to 19th of November 2016 for 7 days. And the composition of the trip was the Most Honourable Prime Minister, 1 assistant, 1 security officer. Total cost was $23,744.80 United States dollars. And then there was the trip to Havana, Cuba, attended and participated in the mass rally to pay tribute to the former president of Cuba, Fidel Castro Ruiz. And that was just for a day on the 29th of November 2016. And the trip included the Most Honourable Prime Minister, 1 security officer, at a cost of $365.34 US dollars. And finally, the last trip during that period was to Florida, United States of America, where he attended and participated in the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association reception during the period of the 15th to the 17th of December 2016 for 3 days. And that included the Most Honourable Prime Minister, one assistant, and one security officer for a total cost of $1,316.64 United States dollars. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I thank the Minister for attempting to answer the questions asked. But I wish to remind you and the Minister, Mr. President, that the first question asked, would the Minister please indicate the number of overseas trips undertaken by the Prime Minister since assuming office in March 2016 to the end of December 2016? The answer purports to tell us that there are 10 countries visited. Doesn't tell us how many trips made. Just looking at this schedule presented by the Minister, one country was visited 3 times out of the 10 trips that is contained here, and one country twice. That's 5. So could we hear the other countries that made up the 10, since they're clearly not contained in the answers here?
Yeah, there are 10 trips, and it means therefore you would have visited a couple countries on a number of occasions. Information is there.
It's less.
Mr. President, you'd be aware that these questions were tabled from the 20th.
Yeah, it's trips,
Sorry,
trips and not countries.
Brown.
Let's
Sorry,
not
Senator
haggle
Brown.
over it. It's
Sorry,
trips
Senator Brown.
and not countries.
Minister Reid, you understand what the difficulty is?
Yeah, it's
Would
trips.
you clear it up, please?
It is trips and not countries. So let's not haggle over the countries. It's 10 trips. Yes.
Mr. President, I'm not haggling over the thing. If the Minister, I submit my question first on the 20th of January. They have had a long time to answer it. And with the care that they have taken for them to write the Prime Minister has visited 10 countries as the answer to my question, it's not true and represent what Senator Reid would have described in his earlier statement as fake news.
Senator Brown, what he's saying that it's trips, not countries. Move on, man.
Yeah, but Mr. President, you know that due care must be taken. Just as due care is taken when questions are being presented to be asked and are oftentimes rejected, due care ought to be taken in answering truthfully and honestly and carefully the questions asked. So we're told now, what is clear, Mr. President, from the answer, whichever it is, 10 countries, 10 trips, is that the Prime Minister during those 10 months traveled once a month. In the 10 months, from March to December 31st, the Prime Minister made 10 trips, 1 trip per month on average. Could I ask, Mr. President, in light, I have some other questions, but I recall that other Prime Ministers who have traveled have been able to bring benefits back to the country. Trips to Spain result in the investment in the hospital in Montego Bay. Trip to the UK, $5.8 billion in grant. Trip to China, Children's Hospital. Trip to the USA, LNG, changing the face of the country. Could I ask what tangible benefit can the Minister report from these once a month trip during the first 10 months of the government by the Prime Minister?
Good question. You're quite welcome to ask your question, Senator. Yeah, man, just like when you're in court. Mr. President, the first trip, the Prime Minister's visit to Washington, D.C., and we are all aware of the substantial benefits that the country has received by virtue of the U.S. Caribbean America Energy Summit, that we are benefiting from LNG, from Fortress, and several U.S. investors in our solar energy. And if the opposition want to take any credit for beginning the process, we have no problem in giving you the credit. No problem. The second one had to do with a standing summit, which was attended by the former leader as well, Summit of the Americas. And that, of course, deal with several bilateral trade issues and diplomatic matters to deal with the states of the Americas. No one here could doubt the importance of identifying with the opening of the expanded Panama Canal, considering that there was much vaunted promotion of Jamaica being a logistic hub, and they promised to have established the logistics hub during their administration. And since we are the government of implementation, it is very important that we have our presence there to ensure that that dream and that reality will be advanced by this administration. Mr. President, the trip to Georgetown, Guyana, I'm sure the leader of the opposition business, knowing your own commitment to CARICOM and CCCJ, would obviously, what is related to CARICOM? Yes, yes. So that's what I'm saying is, you can't, I don't know that any of us here is going to question the participation of our Prime Minister in the regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM. The economic benefit, we're going to have to do a full detail of the value of CARICOM, benefit of CARICOM to our country. Yes, and that report it has been done and will be shared to the stakeholders shortly. The matter of the attendance at the Olympic Games, and former Prime Minister Simpson did attend as well, and the Prime Minister, as a caring, responsible head of state, sought in his visit to motivate our athletes. He participated in investment forum that when you look at Jamaica's visibility, when you look at brand Jamaica, how we were able to promote brand Jamaica so we could get substantial investment flowing into Jamaica. The Prime Minister also attended the inauguration of His Excellency Sanchez, Danilo Medina Sanchez of Dominican Republic. And this is a very important economy in our space. We're looking at the Northern Caribbean to see how we can forge greater economic links. And Dominica is a very important market. And the Prime Minister, in good diplomacy, because part of our foreign diplomacy is about promoting trade. So we can, yes, Dominican Republic. Mark, all right. The next one was the General Assembly of the United Nations. At that particular forum, our Prime Minister signed the Domestic Workers Convention and engaged in several other important bilateral meetings. And importantly, also, he used that occasion. Mr. President, this one was so successful. There were no seats available for the massive, important town hall meeting with the diaspora who wanted to see their new energetic Prime Minister as he engaged on the process of rebuilding, the process of bringing prosperity to Jamaica. The diaspora, they were traveling from far and wide to hear their Prime Minister. And if you want to check it, you can see how the remittances have increased subsequent to his town hall meeting. Mr. President,
He's not finished yet.
Mr. President, Mr. President, the Prime Minister also was part of a high-level IMF meeting in Trinidad, November 1 to the 3rd. And let the record show, Mr. President, that this administration concluded a new IMF agreement before the end of the last IMF agreement.
Because we have performed
Mr. President, I now move on to the trip to Morocco. Prime Minister attended the 22nd session of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework on the Convention of Climate Change. And we know how important that is. And we were able to secure 100 scholarships. And very importantly, to develop some very important tourism linkages with the country of Morocco. Those are new scholarships. Brand new. Yes, brand new. Never happened before. Never happened. Well, I met with the Moroccans myself, and at a different time. They came to Jamaica. Their representative came to Jamaica.
Senator Brown wants to be on the delegation.
You know, I remember it was Senator Knight, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. President. It was Senator Knight who advocated, who celebrated in this Senate the passing of the former president of Cuba. And the Prime Minister also, on behalf of the people of Jamaica, led and attended the commemoration of the life of the former president, December 4th, 2016. And it was for a very short visit, Mr. President. He just visited and came back. And you know the long history of the relationship with Jamaica and Cuba, our neighbor. But I'll move on, Mr. President. And finally, the Prime Minister attended Miami, Florida, the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association meeting. And those of us who are involved in the tourism business will know that we are a significant player in the cruise ship business, and that we have been seeking to expand our cruise shipping in Jamaica. In fact, representatives of Royal Caribbean Cruise Shipping recently, just last week, the President himself, with a delegation, met with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Tourism and myself, along with members of the Caribbean Maritime University. And among what they are seeking is to make Jamaica their prime recruiting ground for their cruise ship employees. So, Mr. President, we are confident, sir, that the Prime Minister's trip were quite in order and great benefits have been derived to our country as a result.
Mr. President, some more questions to the Minister. But I want to start by indicating that my question number one asks about the number of trips made by the Prime Minister. In his off-the-script presentation just now, the Minister spoke about a trip to Dominican Republic that is not contained in the 10 trips or 10 countries that he said the Prime Minister visited. And the question is, how many more such trips that are not contained in this that were made? And we demand to know a full and honest answer from the Minister. Because what the people are saying now, instead of look at me, my dream, is look at me now, trips after trips after trips. So I want to know how many other trips after trips have been left out of this.
Point of order, Mr. President. Trips, with due respect, Mr. President, does not rhyme with dream.
Senator Reid.
Yeah, you understand that? They don't rhyme. Why are you pointing at Senator Morris? Senator Morris?
Senator Reid, would you continue, please?
Yeah, Mr. President, we have been very faithful, and the fact is that similarly to other trips, we do a number of things on the one leg.
Senator Reid,
yeah.
what Senator Brown is asking is this. Dominican Republic is not contained on the original list. That's what he's asking about.
Yeah, Mr. President, the information I have is that during that same leg of the journey, he also attended the inauguration.
Leg of which journey?
The period of August 11 to 15, 2016, Mr. President. That on the way from Rio. The actual inauguration was on the 16th of August, 2016. Yeah. Yeah, but we've said that. Yeah,
the question, Mr. President, is whether there are more countries like Dominican Republic that have been left off. He is now admitting, he has said to us Dominican Republic is there. What I want to find out if there are more that have been left off. And do you have the cost for the Dominican trip?
There are no other trips, and similar to the trip to Morocco, where he stopped in Bahamas, there's one cost for that same trip. So on the trip to Rio de Janeiro, it was one trip including Dominican Republic, and so the cost for that particular trip, as I repeat, was 19,149.80. So it was one trip that included Rio de Janeiro and Dominican Republic.
Senator Brown.
Mr. President, the total of the trips appear to be 98,953 US dollars and 89 cents. A quick calculation using exchange rate of 130 bring that to about 12.8 million Jamaican dollars. It will appear to us, Mr. President, that, well, before I get to that, let me ask the Minister. Minister, how do you compute the costs? Could you tell us whether it includes, why you all taking them on? Distraction. Could we be told, Mr. President?
Senator Reid, Senator Brown, I'm listening to you and you alone. Go ahead.
Problem, I can't even hear me. Yeah.
But that is how the Senate is running from morning.
I don't want to interrupt Minister Charles. Could you ask him to stop?
You just go ahead, ma. You go ahead.
Could we be told how the costs per trip were computed? Could you tell us, do you know how much was for airline ticket? How much for accommodation? How much for, yeah, coming to that. How much of food? And could you tell us what was the per diem per each person in the delegation? Mr. President, has Senator Charles taken over your role, sir? Because that's how it's appearing to me.
Senator Reid.
Mr. President, those details are not available. I did seek last week to get from the Senator what other specific information he would require, and he did not seek at the time to so amend his question so I would have been able to give him those details. So he can table them and we can respond to them.
Senator Brown.
Mr. President, I understand the minister to be saying that he is not aware of the breakdown of these costs. Good. And it's consistent with him not knowing all that. Could I ask you, Minister, whether or not these costs you have given us contain the costs for other persons who are not listed here, who was part of the Prime Minister's delegation? For example, in Brazil, we knew that family members were there with the Prime Minister. In Brazil, we knew that the Minister of Sports was present. Are the costs for those contained here? We know in the we know also that in the cruise ship meeting in Florida, Minister Bartlett was present. So what we're trying to get from you is just to be clear that this cost does not contain the cost of all the government people who made these trips along with the Prime Minister.
Mr. President, the respectful member is trying to mislead because, again, the costs are presented. And I have given, Mr. President, the composition of the delegation. So the question that was asked was the size and composition of the delegation that accompanied the Prime Minister. That was the question. And we have answered that question.
So again, Mr. President, the Minister is saying to us, and I understand him to be saying, that the people from the government who were present on these trips with the Prime Minister are not included in the cost. And I'm not asking the junior minister, I'm asking the senior minister.
Concentrate on me and ask the question.
But that's what I'm doing.
But do not become sidetracked.
I'm not being sidetracked.
Yes,
but
you are.
Mr. President, you need to prevent people from Senator Charles from interrupting my questions to Senator Reid.
But when people are talking over there, you interrupt them too. So what do you want me to do?
So you are giving the stamp of approval to
you have the stamp of
I appreciate that.
The most important thing is that the people of Jamaica are watching. Bring it down into a free-for-all.
Mr. President, you are the one who may take it there if you wish. You in charge of the chamber. So I'm clear from the answer that, because I'm going to ask other questions on another occasion. This is just the beginning of questions. Assuming the questions are approved. So that we will ask, we are clear here that what you're saying to us is that this is just for the Prime Minister and the limited delegation.
Well, Senator Brown, with the greatest of respect, that's what the first question asked about the Prime Minister, you know.
Mr. President, I know you want to help the Minister, but let me ask my question.
I'm trying to help
Minister,
you, not the Minister.
Minister,
speaking to me.
When I talking to you, I said junior minister. When I want you, I said junior minister.
I appreciate that. And it's state minister, by the way.
Senator Charles and Senator Brown, don't.
So I want to talk to this. I want to talk to the senior minister with cabinet portfolio responsibility.
Or you can say senior state minister.
Point of order. This cannot continue. It cannot.
Okay, I'm glad you said that.
Now.
May I continue, Mr. President? Mr. President, I'd like to ask the government, the Minister of Education, Youth and Information, whether or not in respect to the Morocco trip made by the Prime Minister, whether any commitment was given not to support the Polisario Front, which has been a long-standing foreign policy position of respective governments of Jamaica in order to get the 100 or any number of scholarships being offered by the Moroccan government.
I'm not aware of that, Mr. President. And let me also say, I will defer foreign relations and foreign policy matters to our able and capable Minister of Foreign Affairs, and if the Senator wished to get those specific details, again, I submit these to table the appropriate question.
Mr. President, man.
Thank you, Senator Knight.
Thank you. Minister, I'm dealing specifically with 2C, the size and composition of the delegation that accompanied the Most Honourable Prime Minister.
And I look particularly so at the DC trip and the Caribbean #1. And also at the trip to Guyana, which was the 37th regular meeting of CARICOM, and the trip to the United Nations General Assembly and the climate change meeting, UN, and the Caribbean Cruise Association. Well, leave that one. Leave that one. Because that was a reception. Leave that one. But in dealing with the delegation that accompanied to the ones I pointed out, for example, it is very probable, likely, that representatives from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade attended. And they would have attended as part of the delegation of Jamaica. Because when the Prime Minister goes to a meeting like that, he heads the delegation, and all persons, representatives of state who attend, accompany him. So that being so, if you accept it, would you expand on the size of the delegation if you are able to do so now, or if not, to provide it at some later stage? I can understand the separation of costs, because OPM would bear their cost, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs their cost, but the cost of the delegation
to the taxpayer
has to be fused. Could you assist?
These are partial and misleading answers.
Mr. President, this administration had no intention, I know my Prime Minister, and was pretty much anxious for us to provide all the answers to this question. But again, I appeal to you, sir, that the senators cannot, in one hand, ask questions and expect to get a different result. Because I recall last week, I came here and sought guidance as to clarification as to what is it that is required to be answered.
Mr. President, on a point of clarification, sir. That's not what the minister did last week.
On that point of clarification, you have a point about that?
He did not seek clarification on anything other than whether we wanted to extend the period for which answer should come.
I hear you.
And the minister must, what he doesn't know, he must speak truthfully.
Would you allow him to you are suggesting that he's lying? I'm asking you that.
From me?
No.
I don't know how you could conclude that.
Senator Knight, tell you don't answer.
No. I don't know how you could conclude that from what I have said. Unless you are thinking that.
Senator
Knight,
I wasn't thinking Senator Knight, tell you don't answer it.
He would be following a trail designed for him, that the end of which he could be ensnared. Because if he says he's lying, then there's a consequence to that. I know you didn't intend to lead him to ensnarement. He does not want to go that route, And we all don't want it. So that's why I gave him a sotto voce suggestion.
Admonition. Thank you very much, Senator Knight. Senator Reid.
Mr. President, the point I make is that if we want more details, then we must put the request in the answer. Now, in regards to the composition of the delegation that accompanied the Prime Minister, our interpretation of that question would be those persons who actually accompanied the Prime Minister from the point where he departed Jamaica and was paid for by OPM. I am aware that there are other, for example, in Rio, there are other ministers that were down there, and possibly, as you mentioned, in Guyana. So the point is, but this, our interpretation was that you're not asking for those persons who are not directly on the Prime Minister's trip. No, that's not our interpretation. It's size and composition of the delegation that accompanied the Prime Minister. So if because Rio, for example, the persons who went to Rio did not go with the Prime Minister together. They were there on their own arrangements. They happened to have been there when the Prime Minister was there. So, Mr. President, all I'm simply saying is that they are welcome to retable their questions and we'll give them the answer. If you want to know all the other persons who were there on any occasion like that were not directly part of the Prime Minister's trip as we define it, because we have defined who we consider to be part of the Prime Minister's delegation. And if you need any more information, I am quite happy to get that and to supply it. We're not hiding anything. We're not hiding anything.
Mr.
Sorry, Senator Samuda. Go ahead, Senator.
Just a follow. Minister, you notice I was very specific in asking in relation to the particular trips, and I know you see the theme that runs through. And I really am asking from a sincere desire to assist the Jamaican people to know what is happening. So, President, what I'm suggesting to the Minister is that now that he understands the position from which the questioner was coming, and that we have a common understanding of the information that the question seeks. Maybe I think there's room for it. Rather than going through this whole process again, I think there's room for you to provide, in relation to this, supplemental answers.
Fulsome disclosure
and
the cost of government of these trips.
And you're
obviously what is intended by the question.
Your nod signifies to me your agreement. So I'm asking that at the next sitting or so soon. Thanks.
Mr. President. Sorry. Minister, I'd like to know if you're aware that in answers given in the lower house in February 11th of 2014, it was stated that the cost of trips of then Jamaican government under the PNP administration was 117 million. I'm asking if the minister is aware. Is he also aware that the cost 25 months after Portia Simpson Miller's trips was $40 million?
No,
is he aware that she spent 6.5 million on a trip to Ethiopia?
Point of order. Point of
Is he aware?
Yes, Senator Knight.
Point of order.
Yes, Senator Knight.
He can be, the senator can be asking Senator over here, is he aware about this and
Senator Greedy was asking the question.
Senator Reid? Well then if he's asking Senator Reid, then he should table a question. Should table a question. And yes.
Different subject matter. Advising.
He must and if some and if there is something that arose in the House below, then that ought not to be the subject matter of a question in this chamber.
Senator Reid, any other questions? 1 minute.
I just want to assure.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to assure Senator Knight that I'll be quite happy to provide additional information that is required in regards to the other persons who may have been at the time. At the time. Right. Exactly. At the time when he was there. Right? Because the point is that we are not hiding any information. But what we would respectfully say, you're badgering me. What we respectfully say.
Senator Reid, I would not allow anybody to badger you.
Thank
you assure you of that.
Thank you very much, Mr.
So just please.
Right. So, I would never flee from you. I'm a man of transparency. And so we'll give you the information. We have no difficulty.
Thank you very much. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business. Minister.
Mr. President, there is no intention to do any further business today. So I now move for the adjournment of the Senate today for a date to be fixed.
The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
On a point of order. No. He did? Okay.
The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against? The Senate now stands adjourned.
Jamaica, give blood for it. Give blood and give the gift of life. So safe you don't have to think twice. Do what you can for one another. Yeah, man. Be a hero, be a blood donor. Yeah, me people. another, you might never know. Give blood. Cause you love a life, you love many people want blood. The Father says so. One sign up today, be a blood donor. Many people.